Hi there, welcome to IndyCar on the 5th of February. Every now and again there is one day in the history of a country which I think is pivotal in whatever its political future eventually becomes. Yesterday, I think, was one such day. Now let me explain why I think this is the case. Yesterday saw, by some, I would say, some rather convoluted methods, the eventual release of this secret poll and a report which Michael Gove had commissioned several years ago, in which countless freedom of information requests and eventually a court order has forced him to reveal. Now, what I would say about this is, first of all, that the detail in this is quite remarkable. When I say quite remarkable, not necessarily for what it contains, but the sheer range of data which was obtained using this polling technique. Now, we know that Michael Gove was hiding this report for a reason, but we didn't really know exactly what the reason was. In an edition yesterday, I spoke briefly about the state that the United Kingdom is in and how Nicola Sturgeon seemed to have been got at in some way, not just in my video post yesterday, but also in my written blog as well. Let me explain a little bit about the background here. The reason Michael Gove commissioned the poll and the detailed analysis of Scottish attitudes to independence was for him to try and find ways in which he could reduce the level of support for independence in the most effective way possible. Now, in the data, the analysis showed several weak spots in the pro-independence, not the movement particularly, but the political structures which supported independence in Scotland. And the most notable weakness, incidentally, was actually Nicola Sturgeon herself. And the predictions inside the data which Michael Gove obtained through this secret poll gave him information on how to reduce the level of independence support. And one of those predictions was that if Nicola Sturgeon were to resign, and remember this is back in 2019 that this report, I think, was actually made available to Michael Gove. If Nicola Sturgeon were to resign, then that was one of the most effective ways of causing support for independence to either fracture or to reduce. Now, it's interesting, I think, that this report has come out much too late to actually prevent what happened last year when Nicola Sturgeon bizarrely decided to refer the whole matter of the independence referendum that she was supposedly going to hold to the English Supreme Court, which we all knew would be rejected, and of course it was. And what followed then was, in fact, Nicola Sturgeon's resignation, exactly what Michael Gove wanted to happen. Now, I'm not claiming that there's any kind of conspiracy going on within the SNP. I don't believe for a moment that Nicola Sturgeon colluded voluntarily with the United Kingdom on this. But something happened to change the course of her, not her political career, but something which provoked her to voluntarily end her own political career like this. It was a bizarre move. First of all, allow the Supreme Court to say that we couldn't have a referendum and then promptly resign, causing the independence support to fracture. Exactly what Michael Gove was looking for. And obviously the timing of the release of the information that we now have on this report is too late to make any difference now. So I think what it's revealing is in fact just how Michael Gove managed to undermine support for independence by somehow the United Kingdom coercing Nicola Sturgeon to take precisely the action which the data predicted would cause the most damage. Now, I think this is not unconnected with the failed court case against Alex Salmond either. And what is now happening to Nicola Sturgeon in the United Kingdom media, the trashing of her political reputation, the branding of her as a liar or as trying to conceal the true nature of her private communications while she was First Minister, is all part of this character assassination process. Now, I don't believe that any politician of any particular persuasion would voluntarily go along with such a scheme as this. So some kind of threat or pressure must have been brought to bear on the First Minister for her to do this in the first place. However, it's had the desired effect. It's had the effect which Michael Gove wanted, which was to cause us all to start turning on each other. Again, it's a classic playbook from the United Kingdom of divide and rule, or divide and conquer, where you turn your opponents inward upon themselves. So they're all accusing each other of being treasonous or being traitors or letting down the side or in some way acting in a way which undermined the support for the cause. This is classic British playbook stuff when they are trying desperately to hang on to a valuable colony. So it's not unsurprising that this has happened. I think the depth to which the detail goes is quite incredible. It looked at everything from the age of the people who were responding to the poll, their social class, the amount of money they earned, whether or not they felt Scottish or British, what their attitude was to foreign affairs. In fact, a whole list of different topics was actually pulled to find out what people thought of different things. And what was interesting, and I've delved through this, it's a fantastically detailed poll and analysis of everything to do with our attitudes to independence, that one of the key things identified by Michael Gove in this report is the fact that people who regard themselves as Scottish and not British obviously support independence. People who regard themselves as British and Scottish do not. It also shows, and I think this is counter to what I imagined, that now, in the present time, what we might call the upper classes in Scotland, the people who earn the most, are actually not concerned about paying more tax in Scotland. And they're also not concerned, interestingly, about independence. They are now more in support of independence than they have ever been. And so this has obviously been worrying the United Kingdom, that the very people they relied upon to keep the Union in place, that is, the high earners, the ones who they claimed would leave Scotland because of high taxation, have not left Scotland, and in fact have no intention of leaving Scotland whatsoever. In fact, the contrary is true. They want to stay here despite the allegedly higher taxation they have to pay, because they value independence more highly than staying in a crippled United Kingdom. Now, I went to great lengths yesterday to describe the hollowed out state of the United Kingdom's defences. Now, something which I later learned, but I couldn't include in the programme yesterday, was the state of the United Kingdom's Navy with regards to the Falkland Islands. Now, you all remember the Falkland Islands from 1982, when General Galtieri of the Argentinian junta, which was running Argentina at the time, invaded the Falkland Islands, a British protectorate, and prompted a short but vicious war, which Margaret Thatcher had to hastily assemble a task force from obsolete ships and aircraft at the time to go there and to take these islands back. And since then there has been a garrison on the island to protect it, and until recently there would have been a frigate, a Royal Navy warship equipped with guns, torpedoes, depth charges and so on, to defend the island's fishing waters and other assets. But also there would have been, or there should have been, 5, if I remember correctly, 5 RAF fighter jets who would be permanently stationed at the airfield at Port Stanley. Now, it's since emerged that the frigate is now no longer there. There are no frigates available to send to the Falklands to protect it, and what is left is a single fishery protection vessel with a single 30mm gun, and that is it. And of the aircraft which are meant to be guarding the Falklands, there are only 3 operational fighters actually at the airfield. Apparently 2 are out of service, and that's leaving the Falklands uniquely vulnerable to yet another potential Argentinian invasion. It's also been reported that the Argentinian government has recently decided to purchase some jet fighters, a worrying development, although there is no sign yet that the Argentinian government has any intentions of trying to take back what they regard as Argentinian property, the so-called Malvinas, as they call the Falkland Islands. However, we find ourselves, by a strange quirk of fate, in almost exactly the position we were in 1982, where the Tories have underspent on defence, have ended up with a weakened and almost absent naval force, with very little conventional armed forces to protect the United Kingdom from Russia, as they allege at the moment, whilst at the same time being unable to defend island protectorates such as the Falkland Islands. So if there were any kind of invasion of the Falkland Islands, Britain would have to do exactly the same thing as it did in 1982, and dig a whole lot of airplanes out of mothballs. And remember, in 1982, the British government had no long-range bombers capable of reaching the Falkland Islands, except retired Cold War era atom bombers, Vulcans of all things. These are planes that were designed after World War II. And that was all they had to hit Port Stanley with in 1982. Now I don't know what they have, if anything, and certainly their aircraft carriers, which Gordon Brown committed billions of pounds of our money to, have proved to be useless. They can't even seem to get out of port to take part in an exercise, let alone protect us in the state of war. Plus the fact that the actual aircraft for the aircraft carriers number about 30, and that's for 2 ships. So they're not much use in defending the UK. Plus, an aircraft carrier is a gigantic missile magnet and has very little in the way of protection against seaborne missiles, surface-to-surface missiles, cruise missiles, or whatever else, or even torpedoes for that matter. However, that brings me back to where we are now, which is being too late to affect what has happened to Nicola Sturgeon, and wondering how it was that she ended up resigning in exactly the way Michael Gove wanted her to, at exactly the time he wanted her to do it. It's very, very odd. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that Nicola Sturgeon colluded, nor did the SNP collude in this. I believe that some subtle threat was probably made to coerce her into doing what she did. However, she's now facing the wrath of the United Kingdom media in precisely the same way her predecessor did, Alex Salmond, when he was wrongly taken to court on basically trumped-up charges of sexual assault, which were nothing of the kind. So the British government, I think, now believes that independence is dead. They have effectively neutralised both its most charismatic leaders, Alex Salmond and latterly Nicola Sturgeon, although Nicola Sturgeon has been criticised by her own supporters and by independent supporters generally as being extremely good at communication, very empathic, extremely capable in dealing with the pandemic, and being a better communicator than anyone else in the United Kingdom through the pandemic. Unfortunately, she did not live up to her promises in terms of delivering the political changes and the constitutional changes that she said she would, and that has been evidenced by what's happening now. And that leads me back to an appeal. One of my friends in Salvo has asked me to mention this to you today. The only route that we can now take to gain access to enough democracy to decide on whether we stay in the Union or not is not to go through the Union at all, because going through the Union is plainly pointless. You cannot play by your oppressor's rules when you want to leave a forced union, one in which you're being denied democracy. And incidentally, Michael Gove acknowledged himself that if the United Kingdom had said no to any more referendums on independence, support for independence would have gone up. And therefore his polling, his secret poll, recommended that instead of saying no to any more independence referendums, he just say now is not the time. And this is why we keep hearing this refrain, because now is not the time is not the same as saying no. It's like saying to a child, well, I'll think about it, or we'll see. Is basically not a no, but it's not a yes either. And that is where we would remain for the next foreseeable future if we do nothing about it. And that's why Salvo is appealing to all of you who support independence to go and visit the liberation.scot website right now and to sign the Edinburgh Proclamation. Now, the Edinburgh Proclamation states that we want our powers back, that we want our government re-enabled, and we want to be able to vote on self-determination in a traditional way. They're aiming for 1 million signatures, Initially, they started out looking for 100,000, but 1 million would be absolutely amazing. And to have 1 million people sign up to say that they want that independence, they want the right to vote, and they're demanding it, that is something that we can take to international arbiters of international law so that we can make the case for independence to them and not try feebly and make lots of noise about having referendums that we will never be allowed to have. We will always be told now is not the time, and we will never end up with independence going through the political route from within the institutions set up by the United Kingdom to keep us in the Union. You might as well not bother. So I would urge all of you, if you haven't already done so, to visit liberation.scot and to sign the Edinburgh Proclamation, if not today, but as soon as possible, and recommend it to all your friends. The other thing you can do is join one of the many dozens of Salvo Hubs all across Scotland. And if you visit the Salvo website, you will find out that there are many hubs across all of Scotland's major towns and cities. It costs nothing to join. However, you can then be part of a bigger coordinated effort being run by Salvo, which is not a political party, which has got nobody entering into any elections whatsoever and does not charge any fees to join. And you can participate in the organisation itself and actually lead the charge. This has got to be led by the people. The politicians are unable to act. We have seen this as evidenced by what has happened to both Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon in separate attacks by the United Kingdom, organised by Michael Gove, financed by the Scotland Office, in secret by its so-called 30 members of staff, spending £13 million a year of money which could have gone on hiring 250 new doctors for our NHS. Anyway, that's it from IndyCar today, but I think it's worth reflecting on what has gone wrong with Scottish independence and why Michael Gove concealed this report for so many years. He was waiting until it was too late for Nicola Sturgeon and waiting for it to be too late for us to do anything about it in terms of political parties. So it leaves us with one option only, which is the route out of the United Kingdom is not through national laws, not through national institutions here in the UK, but it is through the United Nations and the International Court of Justice at The Hague. I can't see any other real way of getting out of this union unless we do it in this way. However, the United Kingdom is falling apart. It cannot be defended. It is uniquely vulnerable to attack by almost anybody, including the Argentinians, should they choose to do so. And they are now trying to make war with Russia. They're trying to distract your attention away from the plunging economy and the gloom and doom which awaits us if we remain in the Union by staging some kind of new threat of war in order to distract your attention. So that's it for me today. Get along to Salvo, get along to liberation.scot, sign the Edinburgh Proclamation, and let's get this people movement actually moving and getting what we need to do done with the international arbiters in The Hague, because I don't see any other way that we're going to escape this now. That's it from IndyCar today. I hope you've enjoyed today's programme. By the way, yesterday's IndyCar show got nearly 7 times as many viewers on YouTube as all my previous shows have. 6,300 views on YouTube for yesterday's programme. So go and look at that if you haven't already seen it. But keep sharing as well. It's important that we get this kind of reporting onto YouTube, which is not controlled by Nick Clegg. Okay, I'll see you soon. Remember to keep the faith. Independence will be along a lot sooner than we think, especially if it is we, the people, who are driving it. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.